Stop me if you heard this before. You see a teaser or a trailer for an upcoming game and you're instantly hooked. You follow the developers on social media so you can keep up with the news, the trailers, the screenshots, and release info. You might even sign up for a beta just for the chance to play it early. Then release day comes. You pre-ordered the game ahead of time, it cannot download fast enough, you might have even taken time off work to play it. Then you fire it up and...
What's this about? Check this jank out, everybody. They're stuck on the wall, some kind of invisible wall or something. They literally can't get at me.
Yeah. Here are the top 10 most disappointing VR games of 2023. Number 10, The Signifier. I don't think there's a single game that exemplifies one of the things plaguing VR gaming in 2023 than this entry from Raw Fury and Play Me Studio. That being games releasing as absolute glitch fest way too early. When it dropped on Quest in June, reports came out immediately that it was a buggy mess. The few videos I could find on YouTube spoke to a game-breaking bug just a few minutes into the game that completely halted progress. Even the meta store reviews, which are usually just fronts for content creators trying to plug their videos and a bunch of people trying to spam the referral codes, was slammed with reviews mentioning the bugs. Raw Fury has a nice little niche helping to bring indie flat games into VR. I counted 4 this year alone, including the excellent Call of the PCVR. The Signifier is definitely the worst of the lot, and that's a real shame. Number 9, Crime and Mercenary Tales. It's one thing for a game to be bad. Talented content creators can get content out of bad games. Go search video game glitches on TikTok if you don't believe me. It's a whole other thing when a game is boring. Such is the case with Crime and Mercenary Tales. This one is for Carbon Studios, who also did Warhammer Age of Sigmar, The Wizards, and The Wizards Dark Times, the latter of which is an underrated title that just added co-op. Uninspired is the best word I use for Crime. Melee combat games are a dime a dozen in VR, so if you're not bringing something unique to the table, you're going to be written off pretty quickly. Crime features all the hallmarks of pedestrian combat. Easily telegraphed enemy attacks, dull AI, lack of enemy variety, all the things that have you struggling to stay engaged within 30 minutes. Number 8, NFL Pro Era 2. This one isn't necessarily a bad game in and of itself, but the fact that it even exists is the disappointment. We talked about this in the first episode of my new podcast, the XR Remix Podcast. Rather than paraphrase it all, here's that segment.
What happened to NFL Pro Era 2?
No, you go ahead.
They were supposed to... Go ahead.
Go ahead, Shell. No, you on the soapbox, man. Get to stay on there.
Yeah, no, you started this. Don't
You got the Clippers. You got the Clippers.
I want to hear about this. Especially with NFL Pro Era, right? So we waited for this game to do updates for like a year, right?
Yes.
It was a solid start. No updates. Nothing, right? And it was supposed to have multiplayer, constant updates. They didn't say a word. Even on the MetaConnect conference, they didn't say really anything. Then they dropped Pro Era 2's coming with multiplayer. No updates from the previous game. $30 brand new.
The Madden.
What is that?
The NFL Pro Era, I gotta get on.
Sure do?
You should have never mentioned it, but I'm happy you did. Was the promise? The only reason why I originally bought the game was for the multiplayer. I mean, I was super excited. They even said they had multiplayer in it. You get in it and you realize it's not actually multiplayer against other. Like you couldn't play. This is the original one. You could play multiplayer, but it was like just tossing the ball to one another and playing little mini games. It wasn't full on, but it was like, oh, we're coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming.
I want to play catch.
When I saw the announcement for NFL Pro Era 2, I was excited. It's like, you know what? Cool. You couldn't get it done. You probably gonna have this a Quest 3 launch title. It's gonna look incredible on the Quest 3. It's gonna be incredible. All these. Yeah, multiplayer stuff is cool, and then it comes out, and then
last topic.
And then the graphics still look the same, and the multiplayer.
Same game.
Like
there's no wide receiver mode. So then they this is the thing.
Like...
They just came out. They just came out and said,
we
have multiplayer, but there's no wide receiver mode yet. Off the bat, it's a great game. There's no shade on that. It's a great game. It's just we want a Madden in VR, and we still don't have that yet. And so I'm talking to you, Status Pro. We're gonna hold you to your words.
Number 7, Crossfire Sierra Squad. This one is a victim of expectations versus reality. We saw the first trailer at the Sony State of Play last fall, and frankly, it looked pretty good. Between this and Firewall Ultra, more on that game later, PSVR2 looked to have 2 high-quality shooters on its roadmap. Then the game released and first impressions were not kind. Most early reviews complained about the game being an arcadey VR wave shooter, which was not expected from the limited information we had. So things like semi-automated reloads and visible walls came as a surprise. There was a realism mode for people looking for more of a simulator feel, but to get to that, you had to complete the main campaign first, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. Smilegate did rectify that mistake in a patch a few weeks later. Number 6, the Foglands. The Contest Star PSVR2 community seemed pretty excited about this roguelike shooter, but the launch was an absolute dumpster fire. Bad graphics on PSVR2 and Quest, extremely janky mechanics, particularly when picking up ammo, which is pretty important in the shooter. Even for roguelite, players were saying how repetitive the game quickly became. On social media, the developers acknowledged their lackluster performance and promised updates to improve the game. Number 5, Grid Legends. Ugly. That's the best word to describe EA and Codemasters VR port of Grid Legends. This is a Quest exclusive, and there aren't many racing simulations you can play on native Quest. The game drops seemingly out of thin air with a trailer showing less than impressive graphics, but most VR fans know that trailers rarely give an accurate portrayal of what we see in the headset, particularly on the Quest where the native recording tools are pretty lacking. Then the game released and oof, the trailer wasn't lying. To be fair, reviews were quick to point out how well the game actually plays, but let's be real, we eat with our eyes first, and visually this game has a face only a mother could love. Number 4, Gambit. So remember what I said about good content creators being able to get content from a bad game? Check out a Wolf and VR's video on this game, I'll leave a link down below. On paper, Gambit should have been a huge hit. It positioned itself as a co-op roguelike looter shooter that ticks multiple boxes for VR fans. It was first announced way back in 2020 and originally scheduled to release in May of 2022. It was delayed to December, then again to the first quarter of 2023. With all the delays, we could expect a fully polished game, right? No. Gambit was riddled with bugs, crashes, and a sophomoric sense of humor that felt like a bunch of college frat boys on a weekend bender wrote and voiced all the characters' lines. Even worse, after all the delays, it's still seemingly released unfinished, with developer Xreal Games promising more content for the campaign was coming soon. Number 3, Firewall Ultra. Who doesn't love a button reload and animation in the VR shooter? Firewall Ultra is the success to PSVR 1's Firewall 0 Hour, generally regarded as the best shooter on that platform. After PSVR 2's three-headed launch monster of Horizon, Resident Evil Village, and Gran Turismo 7, this was probably the most anticipated title on the platform. Even with a late development trailer showing less than stellar graphics, the hype level was still high. The release was, to be kind, lukewarm. Ignoring the pedestrian graphics, most of the complaints were about the mechanics. The button reload had been a point of controversy for weeks leading up to release, but the other issues stood out just as badly. The eye-track aiming for grenades wasn't very intuitive, the progression system was skewed so heavily that it took ages of grinding just to earn a basic upgrade, like a flashlight. Matchmaking was problematic with complaints of long queue times. It was a mess. Like most games on this list, Ultra has received several patches already, but again, first impressions aren't lasting, and one of PSVR 2's most anticipated titles turned out just okay. Number 2, Horizon Call of the Mountain. How is it possible for a game to be a legitimate contender for VR Game of the Year and a disappointment at the same time? Horizon shouldered the burden of being the showcase launch title for PSVR 2, being the only one of the 3 Sony-funded projects that was actually built for VR instead of a port of a flat-screen game. As such, it stands as a testimony for all the great things about PSVR 2, like the visual fidelity, the headset haptics, adaptive triggers, eye-track aiming and menu navigation, and so on and so on. However, it also put a massive spotlight on all of the things bad about the headset as well. Through Horizon, the entire VR community got to have extended conversations about the mirror that comes with OLED panels. The ghosting caused by reprojection of a 60 FPS frame rate to 120 was so bad that even experienced VR veterans like Mateo311 and Sadly Bradley had to use snap turning to play the game. The brightness of the panels combined with the high persistence was causing motion sickness. That's before we get to the gameplay, with many reviewers being let down by the sheer amount of climbing in the game. Today this stands as one of the most divisive games on the platform. Most acknowledge the quality of the game, but the controversy surrounding it at launch can't be ignored. Number 1, Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. How do you get this one wrong? A beloved 40-year IP coming to VR with a fully playable co-op campaign and coming from an experienced developer and in Dreams, this has to be a win. Or not. The red flag started when a group of content creators were given demos of the game and not a single one of them came away with glowing praise. Then the boot, early access review copies were not granted to press and creators, which is always concerning. The game released to tepid reviews with complaints about the generic character avatars, ghosts that look more like aliens, the lack of a true story campaign, zero presence from any of the legacy Ghostbusters characters. Hell, we'd even settle for the Melissa McCarthy-led all-female team over these Fortnite-looking characters. Worse yet, the coming DLC was tied to having purchased the deluxe version of the game. What we got was a generic co-op shooter with proton packs that feels like it'd be happier being a live service game, and at a premium price tag for VR to boot. Ouch. That's the list. Let me know what VR games let you down this year down in the comments. If you'd like to continue this death march down VR memory lane, click the video on the screen right now where I go over some of the biggest botch launches in VR. If you enjoyed this, let me know with a like, and as always, thank you for watching.